Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this decision session for the Executive Member for Economy and Transport. I'm Councillor Pete Kilbane, and I'm the Executive Member that will be making those decisions today. I've got no interest to declare in any of the business that's before us today. I am happy to approve the minutes of the last meeting, so I'm happy to sign those off, which brings us directly into public participation. We're going to go online first. We have Councillor Waters waiting to speak first. What I'd say to all participants is when you address the meeting, if you can specifically refer the part of the agenda that you're speaking to, so that we can address the concerns that you've got about any particular decisions that are being made today, or indeed take on board any praise that might be out there for the decisions that we're making. Okay, so for public participation, do we have Councillor Waters?
Morning, Chair.
Morning, Councillor Waters. You have 3 minutes. And again, if you can just be clear as to what part of the agenda you're addressing for us this morning. Thanks. Over to you, Councillor Waters.
Will do. I have a number of items to mention. In terms of item 4 and the announcement, the acknowledgement of petitions, I note with interest paragraph 8, as after I submitted a petition about a year ago calling for attention on Thurtley Way, Farndale Avenue, Osberwick, there was no discussion with ward councillors. Moving on, I wish to object most strongly to the proposal by Highways officers in agenda item 5, Annex P1, to daub double yellow lines around the junction of Outgang Lane, Osberwick. As the executive member will be aware, given the background information I have sent through, the parking issues at this location have been expressly created by City of York Council Highways, specifically Highways Development Control. This was because they didn't listen to local knowledge, they didn't do their jobs properly, and they gave erroneous advice to a planning committee to encourage them to grant planning permission for a taxi booking office at a garage repair site that didn't even have enough parking for the existing operation. At the moment, the entirely predictable problems created by this council are largely outside the business that actually causes them. Double yellow lines will just displace the problem deeper down the industrial estate and further into Merton Way to affect residents. I urge the executive member to reject P1 and instruct officers to consult with ward members and the 2 parish councils as to how to sort this mess that officers have created. On another matter, it was done at the parish council meeting last night, and as they didn't have anyone free to speak, I'll read out their statement in relation to agenda item 8 and the Dunnington Village 20-mile-an-hour request. Dunnington Parish Council discussed this matter at their parish council meeting on Monday the 11th of September 2023 and agreed unanimously that they object to the proposal to defer a decision in respect of this matter for the following reasons. 1. There has not been any formal acknowledgement or consultation by City of York Council in respect of our initial request. 2. The matter does not appear to have received any due consideration by City of York Council. 3. There is no logic in having to wait for a 12-month period until the Bishopthorpe experiment has been completed, which is a completely different set of circumstances. 4. What happens after the 12-month period? Would it be necessary to have to go through a 12-month experiment in Dunnington before a decision is made, meaning a 2-year wait for an outcome? 5. The request should be considered and dealt with in a meaningful and timely manner. And finally, Chair, I'd just like to thank you publicly for attending the recent ward meeting at Dunnington to discuss the bus issues. It was very much appreciated. And in relation to the 20-mile-an-hour item that I've just mentioned, there is an open invite for you to attend Dunnington Parish Council meeting to discuss this. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you, Councillor Waters. It was an honour and a privilege to attend the Parish Council meeting, and I'd be very happy to do so again on the 20-mile-an-hour issue. All the other points will be taken into consideration when we come to those parts of the agenda. Okay, thank you. Do we have Councillor Smalley? Okay. Okay, so next on my list, I have Gwen Swinburne speaking under general remit, I believe, or I might be wrong. Okay. Okay. Thanks, Gwen. You know the drill. You have 3 minutes. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Welcome. I have just submitted an accounts objection, unlawful spending and abuse of officer delegations over the near £500,000 spent on private land in Springfield Close. It never was a street. The issue of officer delegations, perceived, imaginary, and rarely recorded, is a democratic outrage that has sadly now landed on this administration and your desk in particular. Officers pick and choose what they have time to record, which is little, infrequent, and usually petty matters. Huge procurements, waivers, environments, grants bid for and won are rarely reported, and even fewer officer decisions recorded. This keeps members and citizens in the dark, and it is particularly noticeable within your brief. This democratic governance failure is only more acute when the simple key decision-making protocols and officer decision recording at North Yorkshire Council is observed. It's clear, straightforward, and there are many, many officer decisions recorded. Let me tell you, I know more about what's going on at North Yorkshire Council than I do on this one. Please add this to your long list, Chair. Next, at yet another officer decision recorded and slipped onto the decision log was to suspend the Highways Design Guide, with no plan on what anyone is supposed to do now, no plan to replace, no report to you or executive, just a complete and utter vacuum. It's inexcusable that an officer felt he could simply do this with zero arrangement, zero plan, zero press release. It looks really, really bad. Finally, the monitoring officer told Audit and Governance Committee that for every meeting we can ask questions and an answer is required. In writing, if not answered at the time. So, Corporate Director Ferris, using officer delegations, adopted Government House Road in 2021. Can it be confirmed, in so doing, he failed to declare public rights for motor vehicles, which means public rights in the cul-de-sac are now limited to footpath only, no motor vehicles? A simple yes or no answer, please. In writing, if I may ask. Thank you, Chair. And one final good point, we're already benefiting from the pothole sheet work that you're doing. There's some significant improvements in the Groves already. So thank you.
That's very, very good to hear. My sarcasm when asking if there was any praise out there seems to be misguided. Thanks for that, Gwen. We'll get an answer to that question for you. And just for total clarification, all delegated officer decisions ultimately come back to me. So it's my decision whether or not to delegate to officers. So the book does stop with me on all of those decisions, regardless of who's made them. So I'll take up the issues that you raised. Thanks. Okay, next on our list, we have John Young. Mr. Young speaking on a petition about race day barriers. Mr. Young, you have 3 minutes. You will get told when you're getting close to the end of the 3 minutes if it looks as though you're overrunning, and your time starts now.
Well, good morning, everybody, on a wonderfully wet day. At the beginning of the race season this year, barriers appeared without any notification, closing off Canterbury and Albemarle off Queen Victoria Street. Somewhat surprising because the Road Traffic Act, Section 2, says that any road closures are the responsibility of the council, not the police, and also that advance notice must be given in the event of a road closure. I have actually asked Highways Department whether or not there was a special dispensation which allowed them to circumvent this piece of legislation, and I have had no reply. Subsequent to that, on a race day meeting, meet the police and discuss it with local residents, there was then, oh, well, you know, we did it for these reasons. Now, there has never been a problem with race days in our area. It's pretty busy around about 1 o'clock and then about 5 o'clock, and then it, you know, but when the races are on and when the races are over, then it's over. And we have very good neighbourhood relationships with the racecourse as well. It's subsequently determined that it was a company called Paragon, and the racecourse was advised by the Highways Department to employ Paragon to put these barriers into place. They were supposed to be manned by somebody who could then take the barriers out of the way, but half the time the guy wasn't even there, or he was sleeping in his van. And we residents had to run out and move the barriers, for example, to let a funeral party into South Bank Social Club just to allow all the hearses and black cars in. So at that meeting, it was then subsequently said, oh, well, we should get a petition. So I went around, knocked on a lot of doors, left a petition at the butchers, left a petition at the club, collected all the signatures. Not a single person supported this decision. Not a single resident that I spoke to knocking on doors supported this decision. Subsequently, I see that the barriers are now no longer there. And that's a good thing. But what I would like to know is why the law was thrown to one side regarding these barriers and why there was no consultation done. We put in the petition. We would not like to see the barriers again. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Young. Your question's noted, and we'll get an answer to that question.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Next up, we have Councillor Nichols on the speed limit pre-consultation in Bishopthorpe. Thank you, Mr. Nichols.
Morning, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. I have two issues I'm going to comment on. Firstly, item 5, proposals on page 57 and 58. There will be yellow lines coming on Acaster Lane, which anybody who lives in Bishopthorpe will welcome absolutely. We don't understand why the previous administration, the Dems and Greens, ignored the requests of the villagers to stop this danger to people. My only query is that 3 maps there. We've got map 1 showing 47 metres of yellow lines, map 2 showing what we currently have, which is 15 metres, and map 3 showing we're adding 27 metres. Well, 27 and 15 makes 42, but map 1 shows 47 metres of yellow line. I do hope it's 47 metres of yellow line, otherwise you'll have a 5-metre gap before the bus stop, and I'm sure someone will nip in there without any difficulty. So some sort of clarification on the yellow line debate would be great. Second item, item 8, the introduction of a trial of across the village of 20 miles an hour for the next 12 months. So to support this, reasons are there was a request of partial 20 mile an hour speed limit, which would cause confusion, an increase in road signs. 11 of the road signs would go up on cul-de-sacs. An original suggestion would end up with Acaster Lane at 30 mile an hour with 6 roads off it, all with 20 mile an hour going onto it. So the fast road you can carry on, the ones that you can't go fast on with 20 mile an hour. Church Lane was not included, and that's currently probably our fastest rat run, so that'll be ignored as well. I've spoken to the people on the village speed watch, and they support the introduction of 20 mile an hour across the village for a year. You'll be hearing from the parish council who also support the introduction of 20 mile an hour across the village as well. And those 12 people who wrote in with their comments, 6 were in favour, the 5 were against, 1 wasn't clear, but the 5 against, it wasn't on principle of 20 mile an hour, it's more the priority of the 20 mile an hour and the spending of money on that rather than potholes. And they suggested that the reason there isn't speeding is because of the potholes. So perhaps to test this, we could have resurfacing of Maple and Keble North, just to test that if it's a smooth road, whether that affects the speed. So we can request resurfacing on a couple of our roads as well. I'd also like to see some more support for the Speed Watch group as well. At the minute, they're restricted to doing Speed Watch on 3 roads. So if they could extend that in terms of that would help with monitoring. You know, we don't want to take up too much of the police's time, but if we've got a Speed Watch, it would be helpful. They could be maximised and go on more roads. And finally, I'd like to thank Councillor Kilbane for actually listening to the views of the village. They said the previous administration, Lib Dems and Greens, never seemed to ask us what we thought. As you can see from Coda and Myrtle, the payments have been resurfaced. While that is very welcome, it'd have been better to ask the villagers, if you're going to spend tens of thousands of pounds on highways in the village, what's a priority, whether it be pavements or whether it be potholes. So I do appreciate the fact we've been listened to. And I look forward to the introduction of a trial for the next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nichols, and I'm admiring your attempt to get a couple of your roads resurfaced into the bargain. So, thank you for that. Next up, we have Mr. De Gorn. I've got you down speaking general remit and 8 and 9 on speed limits. Mr. De Gorn, I think you are well versed in the procedure.
Indeed, thank you. Today's packed agenda demonstrates the challenge for yourself and officers in England's lowest funded council, how to respond to the varied concerns of residents impacted by local transport issues on a daily basis, whilst also bringing forward a coherent policy-based strategy for transport. We're now promised that this will be revealed next month, building on the one approved nearly 9 months ago by the previous administration. Some work has progressed since February steering group for the local cycling and walking infrastructure plan, which is crucial for securing more active travel for England funding, and is set to be consulted on, I understand, parallel with the broader transport strategy. However, we desperately need to see the BSIP funded bus priority measures being put in place to help rescue our bus services. The city centre bus study, which was done, commissioned by previous administration, also needs to be made public. I note that there's a reference in exec papers for Thursday to the £1 million secured from Active Travel England for Jubilee Terrace Riverside cycle path, but no sign of any activity before the flood season, nor any indication on the agenda today that this work will be progressing. With the rest of the active travel programme, other than Tadcaster Road, stalled pending the strategy and reviews, I'm concerned our funding bids might be undermined by failure to spend what we have allocated. Other schemes that previously approved and should be underway by now include the North-South cycle city centre cycle route from Navigation Road, the cycle ramp to connect Scarborough Bridge to St Mary's and Bootham Hospital, the Hospital Fields Road segregated cycle link, phase 1 of the A19 North Bootham to Shipton route, and no mention of Acombe Road cycle corridor, which was so much focus for Labour in opposition. A couple of specific points from today's agenda. On the speed limits, I very much support the comments from Councillor Waters that a trial for Bishopthorpe and in Dunnington should be proceeding rather than the slow pace proposed by your officers. A wider use of 20 miles an hour to cover city centre and York's village centres should be part of a forthcoming transport strategy to promote active travel and traffic reduction. And lastly, there's reference again to Farrar Street petition for residents parking, which does highlight the difficulty in student-dominated areas of the city. Councillors are elected with less than 50% of the electorate voting for them. So I fail to see why the council shouldn't take a simple majority vote in favour of Res Park as sufficient mandate. The wishes of long-term residents shouldn't be ignored simply because the short-term residents have no interest in responding. And the transport strategy again could address this issue as part of a broader picture. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. De Gorn. Your comments have been noted. Next up, we have Mr. Christopher Tregellis talking about the traffic regulation orders in Rawcliffe, I believe. Is that correct? Okay, thank you. Mr. Tregellis, you'll have got the picture by now.
Yes.
You have 3 minutes, and if you're getting close, you'll
I won't
get
be
a
very long.
whiteboard.
It's quite a straightforward one then.
Okay, thanks. Over to you.
The A19 coming down into town from Rawcliffe, the Shipton Road, is pretty straight, and then it takes a bit of a curve to the left when you get to opposite the sports club. So you get a bit of a curve. And I've spoken to the neighbours about this, and we don't understand why the parking restrictions on the east side opposite the sports club only go up partly to the curve. So what we like is for those same restrictions, which are from 8 to 6, so the daytime restrictions, just to carry on round in front of my house, actually, number 26. So it actually hits the curb and starts where the main road, where the straight road ends. That will help traffic a lot because whilst no one really parks on that side, it is rare for people to park on that side. When anyone does, I mean, it's just chaos. Because you've got the number 2 buses, the Easing World buses all coming down. Usually there's parking on the sports club side. When there's anyone parking on the left side as you come in, it stops all the traffic. And buses, everyone gets stopped. And only it basically becomes a single lane road, the A19. So it's rare for anyone to park there, but when they do, it really creates a lot of problems. The other issue with it, which is why I first thought about it, was my granddaughter came and I was bugging her down the pavement trying to get to the bus stop, which is down opposite Ousley. And because the pavement's 1.2 meters, it's literally this wide. There was a car there with obviously mirrors and things on the car, and you just couldn't get past. You couldn't get past at all. So you can't actually, if any one car or truck or bus or anything is not bus, but a van or anything is parked there, you just can't get past with a buggy or even pushing a bicycle or anything. And even pedestrians will struggle to get past. So what you have to do then is cross the A19, walk down the road, and then cross again to get to the bus stop, which is Ousley. So makes quite a bit of sense just to push that no waiting just to the corner as is recommended. It will help a lot for anyone using the footpath, which I say is only that wide. It's literally 1.2 meters. It's probably less than that. It's very narrow, and means you have to cross and then recross, which is obviously not good. I know it costs a bit. It will cost a bit, and times are difficult. But I think the benefit from it is actually worth doing because it's going to help everyone quite a bit.
Thanks, Mr. Gillis. Just 1 second. Have you got a scheme number that you're referring to?
Oh, sorry, yeah, I forgot. It's the Q4. Sorry, I should have said that.
No, it's fine.
I've got it in front of me. It's Q4 Shipton Road.
Can I just clarify? Are you supporting what's proposed, or are you asking for something on top of what?
No, absolutely supporting. I mean, Councillor Smalley thought when I asked him about it, he said, "Oh, yeah, that just makes sense. We ought to have done it in the first place." He said.
So, I just wanted to clarify your point that you were supporting.
All the neighbours support it. They all think it's a good idea, and it will help us quite a bit for modest cost. I know times are difficult, but it's a modest cost.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much.
Right.
Okay. Next we have, is it Stuart Harrison? Is that? Yeah. Mr. Harrison, you've seen what the script is, so you've got your 3 minutes. So we'll hand over to you straight away.
I don't think it'll take me 3 minutes. Good morning. I'm Stuart Harrison, and I'm the chairman of Bishopthorpe Parish Council. I'd like to talk to item 8, the speed limit traffic regulations orders concerning Bishopthorpe. Firstly, we were a little disappointed not to receive any notification of the proposed implementation of 20-mile-an-hour speed limits on Montague Road and the Keel Park estate. But obviously we heard about them by speaking to people in the village. And we discussed it at our parish council meeting and considered that the expense and clutter of installing new signage on just these parts of the village was unnecessary. We came to this conclusion because conversations with residents of other parts of the village who would like to be included in the 20-mile-an-hour proposal. Roads such as Church Lane, which has been mentioned by Councillor Nichols, Lang Road, we've heard residents on those streets asking for the same thing. And we also think that the proposal for a village-wide 20-mile limit was supported by 50% of those who responded to the council's questionnaire, while most of those that objected mentioned the cost of the clutter of installing new signage to a limited part of the village. The parish council has therefore decided to support the further proposal to implement a village-wide 20-mile-an-hour speed limit. This would involve the change of 4 road signs into the village from 30 to 20, thereby reducing the cost of implementation and overall clutter of the new signage. And finally, I'd just like to say that I support other comments made by Councillor Nichols. Thank you.
Great. Okay, thanks. And we'll look into that question of consultation with the parish council as well. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Harrison. Do we have Councillor Smalley? Okay, Councillor Smalley, we have tracked you down. There is no escape. You have 3 minutes. I believe you're speaking on the Granary Estate Adoption Petition, and your 3 minutes starts now.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, I'm here speaking on the Granary Estate adoption petition. And I'd firstly like to thank officers for all the work that's gone into this. I think the report makes it very clear that this has been a year's worth of work involving multiple different agencies, involving tireless negotiations. I think that doesn't dissolve the fact that this is an issue that affects a great many people, not just those that are currently residents of the estate, but future residents and past residents. And we've had really difficult experiences as ward councillors helping residents, where conveyancing when they're trying to sell the house has raised road adoption as an issue, delaying or even stalling their house sales, meaning they can't get on in life. So I think this is, road adoption isn't a very sexy issue, but for the residents of the Red Row estate just off Water Lane and Clifton Without, it's a very real issue. When we were collecting signatures for the petition before you today, and we were told by many residents that they weren't aware that the roads weren't adopted and weren't aware of the issues that this might cause. I think the road's in very good condition, as is noted in the report, and pleased that the officers seem keen to continue this. I would just, of course, as a local councillor dealing with multiple inquiries in relation to this estate, just urge all possible effort to make sure that this is resolved and in the short term, not sort of the long term. As you'd expect, I'd support option A that's written in the paper, but in paragraph 11, obviously it's your prerogative, Chair, but I would suggest a small additional amendment just after the 3 recommendations, just that the council updates residents every 6 months as to where they are with the negotiations between the relevant parties. I think this is it's a complex situation to resolve, and as much as we can do in terms of leaflet drops as ward councillors, I think it is best that residents hear from the horse's mouth, as it were, from the council every half year, just giving an update via letter in terms of what is happening. And then finally, just to squeeze on, I'd support everything Mr. Tregellis has said, and I've already given my comments on the highways and regulation review, and yes, support the recommendation as Mr. Tregellis has outlined. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Smalley. What I suggest we do is if we schedule a meeting every 6 months between myself and the ward councillors, and then that will focus us on making sure we get a residents update, if that sounds okay. All right, thank you. And last but by no means least, I think on my list, in case unless I missed anybody out, is Councillor Myers. Items 4 and 5, petitions and TROs, I believe.
Thank you,
Councillor
Chair.
Myers, over to you.
Thank you. And thanks to officers for pulling particularly the annual traffic review together. I just wanted to put on record a couple of points of support for the items in Clifton Ward, but I'll start on the agenda item before, which is Res Park and low traffic neighbourhood. I note that myself and Councillor Wells's petition for residents parking is at the top of the list in the way that it's now showing. It would appear to be the next one that would be considered for consultation. And so I'd ask officers to potentially look, as you have done at a previous Res Park application in my ward, to just check the neighbouring streets and see if the existing zones would work, being larger. But in any case, I know residents would be really pleased to see some action on this one. And I guess a question to officers would be to ask when would be reasonable to expect residents to hear about the consultation, now that we're top of the list. Secondly, on low traffic neighbourhood, I notice in the agenda papers that, unlike in the Res Park papers, there's no dates of when we received those petitions. I have a feeling that the one that myself and Councillor Wells put in for Westminster Road is a couple of years now. So again, if I'm trying to understand how long residents would wait until we see any further action on that. That's a significant rat run in a really busy part of the city, and it's a really residential area that would benefit from some action. And then lastly, on the annual traffic review, Annex C is Clifton. Pleased to see some of these items come forward. St. Peter's Grove, C2 is a straightforward one. C3 is I'd say is a real priority. I know many might say that to you, but this one has come about because the number 6 bus keeps getting stopped by inconsiderate parking on a major residential route that it's got down Burtonstone Lane. The police have had to be called out on one occasion this spring because the bus is literally stuck, can't move. Cars had to be shifted away, and what it affects is the patronage of the bus. And then its future viability. It happened almost every week this spring that the bus had to be rerouted. The people that were waiting for to get on that bus had no idea where it was going. The bus stop had been temporarily changed for the day. That's a really big priority and scheme, and for the cost. I think it'd have a big impact for residents and also for transport in the city. And then very lastly, C4, the next one, that's been in the pipeline for some time. Remember reporting this a couple of years ago, I think, but it's quite a dangerous one. The street's really narrow around there. It's the old terrace streets where you've got parking on both sides of the road. You can only get a single carriage car through. And it's really blind junction, particularly the 4-way junction, Lady Road and Cromer Street. And whilst it's not busy, cars sometimes do fly up Cromer Street. It is dangerous. So currently there's nothing there on the junction, and this one would make a real difference. And that's it. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, officers.
Great, thank you, Councillor Myers. And I spent some time last week on Burtonstone Lane myself, and the issue is clear for anyone who spends some time up there. Okay, thank you all very much. I think that's all of our public participants. I haven't missed anybody out. No, great. Okay, so thank you all for your contributions. We do take them all into account, and they all questions will be responded to or issues addressed. So thank you for that. Okay, so we formally acknowledge the petitions that have been received. They will all be looked at, and responses will be given to that either through formal decision sessions or in writing. So thank you for all of the petitions. We now move on to the annual review of traffic regulation orders. Who's taking this one forward? Is that you, Darren? Are you leading on this? Okay, sorry. I've done it. Didn't I just acknowledge? Oh, sorry. Okay. Sure. Yeah. Okay.
We'll just quickly go through the petitions report. So I think we've obviously received a number of petitions. The responses and recommendations of those are within there, which is either to note the request and explain the process, so some of the resurfacing ones, or to add them into various bits of strategy or process. So Strensall cycle path will be considered as part of LC WIP. The Haxby Moor resurfacing and the Stockton on the Forest resurfacing. As you know, there is a technical assessment about where we resurface, but we do have an ongoing commitment, obviously, to reactive maintenance, and both those will be checked for reactive maintenance and responses back to the ward councillors. We will be looking at Hopgrove Roundabout as part of the capital programme in 24-25. So that's not a pre-decision. That will be, as we bring forward that capital programme, we'll say to you, this is an option should you wish to spend some money on it. Farrar Street Res Park is added to the list, as is Garrow Hill Avenue, and the race day barriers. I think there's a review at the end of this race season. I don't know whether Helen and Darren want to add any detail to that.
Yes, as John Young mentioned, some of the barriers have been removed following the petition, and we'll be reviewing positions of future. With regard to this consultation issue, we have a responsibility to consult by notices on lamp person, street furniture in the area. It's not actually to write to every resident and put the information in the op as well, which we did do. I'm not sure why. I'll look into why I never got acknowledgement of his email. And also on the Res Park issues, we've had representation from the ward councillors in the area of Garra Hill, asking if that could be moved further up the list because it was taken forward as part of the university petition funded scheme. As it's 2 years since the university has gone in, we've currently said no. It would have to wait till it gets to the top of the waiting list. Just for your information. And Farrow Street, the ward councillors also asking if that could be progressed sooner, but there's no work officer capacity at this time.
Everybody wants their schemes at the top of the list, of course. Okay, all right, sorry, thanks for that. Yeah, so it's right to give the detail.
The list, just for your information, the list in terms of the waiting list is on page 24 of the pack. It details the order in which we're dealing with them when the petitions were received.
If there were, obviously there were questions raised around the legality of the barriers. So has that question been answered, or are you in the process?
If it's not, I'll look into that and
okay.
get back to
all right, okay, that'd be good. And I think, you know, since we are talking about these, I think that the Farrow Street one is really interesting, isn't it? Because actually there are a number of students who are calling for a res park in their zone. So, you know, the traditional narrative is that in student areas you don't want res park. Well, that's not the case. In this instance, we've got students that also want to have res parks. I think there are students that have actually signed the petition to call for it. So maybe that traditional narrative is changing, or maybe it never was what it was. Okay, anything else on that?
Just one last thing. Councillor Myers mentioned about Westminster Road. We received the petition December last year, so it wasn't. It's been on the. So it's only been on the list for 8-9 months now.
Yes, if only we had more resources, huh? Okay, so working through. Okay, and thanks for that, and thanks for the reminders to go through them. Okay, so the annual review of traffic regulation order requests. Start with you again, Darren. Now, what I suggest we do with these is we have had some questions raised, some objections raised, and indeed, you know, some approvals raised from residents and councillors. I'm proposing that we approve all of the ones that have got no objections or questions around them, so that we don't have to go through every single item. So we go with the officer recommendation where there's not an issue and where there's not a problem, and the ones where there have been objections or questions raised, then I guess we deal with those as we go through the report. So I don't know if anybody's been keeping track of the objections that are raised or the questions that were raised and what's come in via email, but whoever has been keeping track will take us to our first one.
I will try my best. So just in terms of process, this is to advertise the proposed change to the traffic regulation order. So there is a second bite at the cherry for any residents that don't agree with what we've advertised. So this is a first stage. There will then be a second report that comes back once we've advertised all of these in the paper, etc., and they will come back with their comments, and then we'll present that back to you. So in terms of and I'm not promising I've captured every comment, but the ones I think we've talked about is B1, and I think there was a question about whether it was 42 metres, and I think the point is where the southern line, where it stopped, where the double yellow lines stop on the right hand side of Acaster Lane, whether it's 47 metres and level with that boundary, or whether it's level with that further down the road or level with that boundary. You know, that's something we can clarify. Does it stop?
Yeah, I can take that. So the original thing we put out last year was to do 47 minutes in the bus stop clearway. We received complaints from the resident adjacent to the old barn saying that the bus stop clearway will then obstruct their drive. So that's why we've reduced it to 42 and gone in line with their northern property. So then there's still sufficient room. If it does become an issue with the bus stop in future with people parking south of that, the transport team said that they'll look at putting in a bus stop clearway, which doesn't need a TRO. So it will be something we'll keep monitoring in future.
Okay, so that's for resident access.
Yeah,
So is that 47 metres incorrect then in?
it's what we proposed last year.
Right,
And then
okay.
we reduced the 15 and now
Okay.
we've gone back with 42 to make sure there's
Right,
sufficient
okay.
room for the bus to still park without obstructing the drive.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I'm skipping over Burtonstone Lane because that was supported. The next one I've got mentioned is I2, which is Reed Park. This was a written representation from Councillor Pearson. The officer recommendation is no further action, but Councillor Pearson would like it advertised.
I've got Councillor Pearson's email that came through last night, and I want to thank the ward councillors for contributing to this. I think what we'll do, given sort of this all did come a little bit late. I only arrived here this morning. I can't really give it due consideration, I think, in the amount of time that I've had this morning. So we'll go with the officer recommendation as is, and we can review and obviously take soundings from the ward councillors as to how it is once it's in, if it has solved the problem or if actually more work's needed.
So, sorry, just to be clear, we're not proposing to advertise this one. Do you want us to advertise it so that we can see whether the residents support it or not? Or Councillor Pearson would like it, I think, as a minimum advertising. I think he'd like some more in reality, but we could advertise it and see whether there's objections. But I think if we take the officer recommendation, we won't do anything further with this.
Yeah.
If we listen to Councillor Pearson, we could advertise it and see what the community response is.
I think what we'd need to do is we'd need to consider what Councillor Pearson is saying. So leave as is, take the officer recommendation, and we can work on this.
So we could add it into next year's review.
Yeah,
or the next review.
If we get a bit more detail from the ward councillors as to what they're trying to achieve.
So James, you missed G2. Would add a representation from resident Connaught Park. So he would like us to advertise further restrictions further down to the end of the development. He lives on the estate just as you go through, just off the right. He has sent further petition. I don't know if you may have seen it from Mr. Knight.
Yeah.
About unshared parking around the junctions, and as officers, we have no objection to go further. We've just, when we've visited the area, it hasn't been that far. We showed representation of it being like that on Sunday with people visiting the care home on the weekend.
Okay.
We'd happily support his addition to go further.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, we'll go with that. He's basically saying that it wouldn't do the job, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if you're happy to go further with that, if you think that's going to help the situation there, then happy to support looking at working that up.
So we just need to modify in the recommendations that we're slightly tweaking G2.
Yeah.
Basically, you're giving us the authority to tweak that one in response to the resident recommendations.
Yeah.
I think the next one is I3 from another one from Councillor Pearson, where again we're not recommending any action, but Councillor Pearson would like it advertising. So
yeah.
Is that the same as?
Yeah, I mean, again, I understand what Councillor Pearson is saying, and I understand his desire for it to happen. But if we are going to take that forward, let's do it in proper consultation with the ward councillors and the town council, and let's get some input into it rather than sort of making an ad hoc decision here today.
Okay. I think the next one is P1, which is out Gang Lane, Merton Way, Oswaldwick Link Road, where we heard from Councillor Waters earlier on this. I don't think there's any dispute. There's an issue there.
Yeah, I think I hear what Councillor Waters is saying. I think the issue that he's got really is with the original planning decision around this, and I think we need to disconnect actually trying to make this junction safe from that original planning decision that clearly is not he's not happy with. I think we do need to do something here. I understand the concern that putting the double yellow lines where they are will actually just move the traffic to go and park elsewhere, because let's face it, that's what happens pretty much everywhere we put double yellow lines. So I'm happy to go with the officer recommendation on this to implement the double yellow lines. And I think it was an interesting solution that Councillor Waters was proposing, which was the sort of more of the urban clearway type solution that he was looking at. And I'm happy for you to enter into discussions with him around that proposal. But I think the alternative to step back and get into those discussions that may or may not actually resolve anything is not a comfortable place for me. I think if they're needed, they're needed. So let's get on and do put the lines in.
So we'll advertise, but discuss other options in the background.
Yeah, and if, you know, during that consultation, then further things are suggested that are doable within the timescales, then happy to take them on board.
Okay. I think the next one is Q5 Mitchell Way, where we've had a number of representations. Whether who's best placed to summarise those? I think Darren's fielded quite a few.
So we're proposing restrictions on the full side of the south. The residents are against that and would like them on the opposite side. They don't see there's a benefit to have it on the side where the drives are. As the photos show that have been submitted, I don't know if you've seen the representation from Simon Richard.
No, we're allowed to get that.
It does show the parking on both sides. Our proposal was to keep it on this side away from the drives to make access clear for them, and also it will help with remove the footpath parking, which is the main issue of concern. Sorry, they've not painted very well.
No, it's fine. But it's basically they've got the same issue both sides, haven't they?
Yeah. But so they would write on the opposite side that's proposed.
So is there any what's the difference between putting them on one side to another? I suppose on the one, are they getting their drives blocked by people parking in front?
Yeah, there'll be an obstruction of visibility to exit and enter the drives if we leave that side potentially.
Okay. But the people who live there
are the people that park in there. There's no benefit to park there to walk into the near area that we can see.
Okay, but it's actually pavement parking that we're trying to.
Yeah, that would, yeah. Yeah,
okay,
there's a lot of residents with small children that are having issues getting past.
Yeah, well, you shouldn't be parking on the pavement, so let's stop it. Okay.
So are you happy with the officer recommendation?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. I think the next one is St Stephen's Mews T4, where we got part of the written representations from sorry, not scroll fast enough. A resident said basically that they didn't feel the parking issues were as bad as described.
So what's the reason for the scheme coming forward?
Well, I think a resident raised an issue looking at the.
It was a resident that raised the issue of parking in the turning head. There's also a path out of the bottom of the turning head that takes you to Front Street as well, so you get a lot of short-term parking there.
Okay, well, we've got mixed residents' views on it. We've got a resident saying we shouldn't have it. We've got a resident saying we should have it.
Indeed.
Okay, put it out to advert and see what the response is from the people who are there. Obviously, they can contact their ward councillors as well. Yeah, so I mean, yeah, put it out to advert and see what we get back.
And I think.
You missed this couple, should we say?
Oh, go on. If you could.
So in that same ward, we had representations from Council Waller.
Yeah, it's all those representations.
T1, he was in favour of the principle of the idea, but he would like a parking bay created in the verge, which is something the Ward Council has been pushing for. It's outside the scope of this, and I think there's the issue with the funding that's now been removed that could potentially take it forward as a war scheme. So we can't really do anything else. We don't want to obviously.
But we have to do what we can do.
Yeah.
Don't we? I mean,
Yeah, we're just ignoring
the parking bay may or may not happen at some point in the future, but we can't hang around for it. So no, crack on with it.
Dijon Avenue, he's the T2.
Yeah.
He was generally in favour, but does feel that there's other issues in the area due to the Wellfield Green.
It's not really an objection though, is it?
No.
Okay. And T5.
Just about regular complaint.
I think, yeah, there's no major objection to the actual proposal. So yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
There was a few other wards that were missed as well, which I'll just go through quickly. So in Hewitt, we received representation from the ward councillors, J2, which was the removal of 1 metre of residence parking bay in front of the property.
Yeah.
The resident wants the full bay removing, and ward councillors raised concerns about whether this would, if we just remove 1 metre, would it increase do sufficient sight lines? It's the minimum we can go to leave a bay. The area is oversubscribed. We've never previously had any objections from previous residents of that property.
Okay.
And there is further properties further along that do have worse visibility. So, just.
So let's do as proposed.
Yeah.
See,
okay.
well, advertise it and then see if it's implemented, what impact it has.
J3, the comments they seem to be in favour. We're just asking about the petition for the res park on Douglas Avenue. Yeah, and the only other comment was on J12, which was asking for a bollard at the location, which is again outside the scope of this. It's we had comments from ward councillors, Amphia Drive N1. Mainly to do with stadium. Obviously there's ongoing survey work, and if decisions made, there's some other proposals to go out about N1. I'd say it's mainly concerned about parking. N2 is the same issue.
So any objections to the scheme as proposed?
Yeah.
So
yeah, they're just asking to take into consideration this of an impact of racing the stadium, which we are aware of, but I said I just want to make sure you're aware of our comments.
Okay, well, are they proposing anything else?
Not, it doesn't seem to know. They're asking for surveys the streets at time of matches.
Okay.
Which
we can do.
Yeah.
At some point. Yep. Okay. Okay.
Support, and they support the rest of the proposals in that area. The next one is in your own ward, the Numford Road issue.
Oh yeah. What letter number are we on?
So it's 0-5.
Yep.
So it was proposed previously and not taken forward.
Yeah.
We've since had representation from Waste Services saying that there was issue. There was a request from a resident to shorten the bay, and sorry, just let me make sure I got this correct. What was saying? To shorten the bay and still leave some on the outside the residence property.
Yeah.
Give and then change the parking to the other side. I think evening res park.
Yeah.
That we still feel that potentially will have an issue with vehicles trying to go on the bend, so it's not. That's why it's not being taken forward.
Yeah.
But happy to.
Yeah. No. I mean, there's I mean, it is my ward, so I know that there has been collections missed in that area. And when the crews returned to try and get through, the road was still too narrow with parked cars for them to get to it. So we do need to do something about that. So progress with this and advertise it, and then see what comes back in. I mean, I know that we've been around this trip before, but that was more to do with delivery vehicles hitting cars, I think, at that point. The waste issue has become more of an issue lately. So crack on with that and get it advertised and see what comes back.
And then there was the last one was comments from the Ward Councillor in Rural West at R1. They were in favour of. And then sorry, I've got them in the wrong order, that's all. The school Creek Clear, this seems to be in favour, and the parish council are not in favour of R3, because they do not want a provision of yellow lines in the village. Repainting the white lines, including the middle line leading to Bracknells, might deter parking because it reminds people they are near the entrance, even if they can't see it. So they would just like the current road restrictions refreshing.
Yeah, okay. I mean, one of the problems is that you might not like yellow lines, but how else are you going to stop people parking there? That is the statutory instrument that is available for us to use. So no, I think progress with the recommendation on all of those. Okay. That it? Any more for any more?
I think, just to clarify the comments that were in the report, I haven't repeated. That's why me and Darren have given a slightly different list.
Sure. Yeah. No, that's fine. That's fine. Okay. All right. So that concludes the annual review of traffic regulation order requests. So we move on to moving traffic offence enforcement consultation responses. Who's taking this one forward?
I'll do a very brief introduction before handing over to Graham. So this is basically a change in the legislation. We can take on powers for certain offences which have historically only been enforced by the police. There's a process to go through, part of which is public consultation. We've been through that process. You've previously identified at decision session a pilot scheme for that project. So over to Graham to give you a quick update on the consultation results and the next steps in terms of applying to have these powers.
Thank you, James. So we conducted a 6-week consultation line with DfT guidance. We had 58 respondents, not many, but just over 70% of them came back really supportive of this, along with a few of the comments as well. I don't propose to go through the comments in this, but they're in the appendices and in bold. I've added some comments in there where I feel that their comments are justified. So there's public support for this. This being a trial of using these powers under Traffic Management Act 2004 Part 6 at the Micklegate one-way restriction, which will use the ANPR camera enforcement solution that's there. On top of that, we also did an additional traffic survey just to see exactly what the problem was. We had a number of anecdotal observations from members of the public and such like, saying how they had a number of near misses and going through the Micklegate bar in the correct direction with traffic coming through in the wrong direction, facing towards them. Quite telling. I've had another survey done for August just gone. Those results come out later this week, but I don't propose to be anything different from what we see here, where we had approximately 50 vehicles, cars and light goods vehicles going through the direction the wrong way, including a number of motorcycles as well. So that just shows that there is an issue there, obviously, going forward. I spoke to North Yorkshire Police, Chief Constable's Office, who returns on Thursday. In principle, they are supportive of this. We'll get confirmation of that later this week or early next week from the staff officer there. I've also been in consultation with officers this morning that are here for items 8 and 9 from the police as well, just to show that kind of solidarity in the partnership working going forward. It is the view that we'll apply for these powers under the delegated approval from himself to James Gilchrist to apply for these from Department for Transport next month. Then once we have that, we'll proceed to take forward a trial in due course to resource And then as and when new schemes come forward, which the consultation shows there are a number of areas that the public would like to see, yellow box junctions, band turns, etc. We'll take those forward independently through our own consultation with that, and then obviously come back to yourself in due course as and when new schemes go forward. So really, yeah, it's just to take note of the consultation and to provide that delegated approval for Mr Gilchrist to write to the Department for Transport to request these powers.
Okay, thank you for that. And thanks for the report. Yeah, it's I think most drivers are really annoyed by other drivers who seem to think that the rules of the road are not for them. So I think most sort of right-thinking drivers will welcome any measures that we can take to make the place safer and make sure that we're all playing by the same rules. So, and am I right in thinking that this is actually a trial to show that we can use the system effectively and properly, so that we can demonstrate that we can actually use these powers? And if this trial is successful, then we can roll these powers out across the city to try and prevent people from blocking hatch junctions and making left turns or right turns where they shouldn't, those kind of things.
Yeah, that's exactly it, really. So we want to proceed fairly cautiously with this. We're also used to using APR enforcement on the two bus lanes we have in York, Coppergate and Milpolitan Lane. The traffic regulation order will need to be updated once we do have these powers, and assuming speaking to conversations with the Department for Transport, we will get them. So what we're looking to do is any existing restrictions out there, including yellow box junctions, we'll proceed to roll out with this using this technology going forward, essentially. So yeah, just try to see how it goes, and then look into making that permanent.
Okay, James.
Having worked in London, I know that these are often perceived as money-making exercises. I just wanted to reiterate this is about compliance. So I think Graham can explain, but actually, you know, for a period of time, unless you are a repeat offender, it's a warning process first. So this isn't about making money. This is about compliance and making sure, as you said, the rules of the road are obeyed.
Yeah, if it works, we won't make any money at all, because nobody will be breaking the rules.
Exactly.
What we want is for people to stop driving the wrong way through Micklegate Bar, for example.
Very much so. I mean, there's one example in Derby, for example, where actually they've removed the traffic system in place in there because people are now adhering to the regulations that's in there. So there is a 6-month warning period of this, of which the first warning letter will go out to any motorists passing through that within the 6-month period. After that, then yes, it is a penalty charge notice to be issued. So it is very much around education.
Yeah, I think my only sort of concern about it is around the sighting of the camera. And I know that's been raised by a few respondents as well. So if we can work with our conservation people to make sure, given the historic setting, really important national setting, that we position the camera in such a place that it's not too intrusive on that, but it can also do the job. And so with that in mind, yes, I'm happy to support the recommendations that we progress with these trials, and personally I think that all right-thinking motorists in the city will welcome efforts to try and control errant drivers. Okay, thank you. Okay, item number 7, response to the Granary Estate Road adoption petition.
I mean, this is obviously a complicated issue, most of which is not of the council's making, but is affecting the adoption of the roads. We've laid out in the report the options. Helen may want to add some fine detail, but there isn't, you know, we will continue to work with Yorkshire Water, but we have limited powers to force Yorkshire Water to do anything.
Does that cover it all?
Well, I think otherwise we would have to go into quite a lot of detail, which I don't think, you know, it's in the report. But yes, what we're proposing is to continue to work with Yorkshire Water and also with the developers, Persimmon and Redrow. We have had meetings, we have looked at legal advice. They are looking at their own legal advice. We're trying to find a solution, but it's not a simple one to resolve, and we've been working with them for a few years. Obviously, Councillor Smalley asked for regular updates, but you proposed potentially a meeting. So
yeah, I think if we schedule in meetings with the ward councillors, it does tend to focus our minds in terms of right, what's going on with that. I mean, it is a complicated issue, isn't it, to do with land ownership and to do with who's responsible for what, etc. But I think if all the parties involved just pull their fingers out, we can get this resolved quite quickly with goodwill. So we'd be very happy to write to Persimmon, to Redrow and to Yorkshire Water to that effect, maybe using slightly more polite language, but we do need those organisations to get on and sort this out, because they're not really leaving the residents in a very fair position, because this does cause problems for people buying and selling, etc. So yeah, we do need to get it sorted out, and we're very happy to write those to Yorkshire Water, Persimmon and Redrow, asking them to get this resolved once and for all. So with that in mind, happy to support the recommendations as is within the report. Okay, thank you. So item number 8, speed limit traffic regulation order amendments pre-consultation.
So there are 2 reports at different stages of a process here. So the first report is about pre-consultation, and then the second report is what happens after we've done the consultation, obviously. So they aren't necessarily linked. But Peter, do you want to take us through with colleagues the locations?
Yeah, so this is John Hunter and Jeff Walters.
Just keep your mic on.
Sorry, apologies, Councillor. This is John Hunter and Jeff Walters from North Yorkshire Police, work on the Traffic Bureau. Indeed. They're here to provide any further guidance that you may wish or seek. Annex C for pre-consultation, first site is New Lane, Huntington. The speeds are there at the moment, 85th percentile, 34 and 31, no accidents. It is a rural road in its essence. The local ward councillors tend to suggest not, but there's nothing on it to say otherwise, apart from to the fields, etc. either side. And the police, ourselves and colleagues in road safety and highways engineering, unfortunately don't support the reduction to 30 miles an hour from 40. There are just no indicators that would support that.
I think at the moment, our policy position as a council is we look back and look at the DFT guidance and take the police guidance about where we make recommendations for change. So the DFT guidance is attached as an annex about what speeds DFT would expect. Now, through the development of local transport plan, that might be something that you want to look at about whether actually we adopt a local policy around this, and we'll need to explore with legal, etc., what weight that would carry. But in the absence of anything, this is the framework which we're applying to the decision making.
Okay, I think isn't it access to the cemetery is the issue across New Lane? Is that right? There's a cemetery.
It's not on that section of road.
It's not that section.
No.
Okay, so it's just
there is a
section.
future planning application that we may need to revisit this in the future. I believe it's something to do with allotments and some sort of change of use of land. And so with an access issue and depending what considerations, we may need to change it in the future. So it's not an outright dismissal or rejection, but at the moment the DFT criteria aren't met, no accidents, current speeds are pretty much at the level. In reality, our suggestion is that why spend money if we don't have to for the time being? Okay,
that's fine. And if there are access issues to allotments, and I remember I spent quite a lot of time on New Lane earlier this year. It can get busy, can't it? Especially people going to the football and stuff. So I think it's probably is going to be more of an issue of getting across the road to places that people are going to rather than the speeds themselves. So it might be that we need to look at this in a different light.
With the crossing and the comments from the school going to the sports facilities, swimming, etc., at the new facility, we are working with road safety and road safety engineering to put in a crossing to the footpath through to Vanguard to re-emphasise the 30 limit. I think this application was mainly because a lot of people will come into the 30 limit at a bit too high a speed.
All right. Okay, we'll proceed on that basis. Thanks.
Very good. Thank you. The next one is North Lane, Huntington. Again, it's purely a rural road with very few access points. 60 mile an hour currently. It's request for the 30 mile an hour to be extended from the current terminal point near the housing, very close to the housing, to the A1237 roundabout. 2 injury RTCs, but they were at the roundabout on the 1237. They weren't anything to do with the road. There's no accidents along that stretch of road at all.
Okay.
There are concerns about speeds, but that particular section of as coming into the village, but that section of road itself doesn't meet the criteria for 30-mile-an-hour limit or anything else besides. It is a 60-mile-an-hour road. However, it's been drawn to my attention most recently that there is further development to the north of Monks Cross that may impact this. And again, the speed limit will have to be reviewed as part of the planning permission.
Yeah, and I think, definitely, and also part of the local plan adoption and also the local transport strategy. So happy to proceed as.
It's not very going to affect it, but there was a request put in yesterday for a footpath along that section half lane from the properties, who had concerns about walking along that stretch route.
Okay.
No, so just so you're aware of all the details. It came in yesterday, which has been reviewed by the highway engineers.
So again, once that decision is made, that might change.
Yes, in the court, in the realm with other things. Just to sort of reaffirm, the local ward councillors have provided funding for vehicle activated signs within the existing 30 limit. They've yet to be installed. Quite what the delays are, I'm not sure. It's not my my area of work, unfortunately.
Okay. I mean, I'm happy to reduce speeds all over, but I think we need to do that as part of a strategy, really, rather than on individual roads one at a time in a sort of an ad hoc manner. We're trying to avoid doing that. So, there may, for those who want these things to happen, it's definitely speed reduction across the city is something that is on the agenda, but not just on one-off sort of particular roads. So, okay, happy to go with your decision on that. So, Dunnington.
On this one, because of the, I noticed Councillor Waters said there was no response to the original request for a village-wide 20. There was, and it was a very comprehensive response, Councillor. I took opinion from North Yorkshire Police around road safety, team and engineers. I also took advice and guidance from a retired superintendent of police who's lived in Dunnington most of his policing life, and he was a local area commander. And also a friend of mine who was number 2 at the Driving Standards Agency some time back also took a drive round for us. The concerns were that to impose a 20-wide village scheme would lead to widespread disrespect of the 20 limit. With no enforcement possible, we would be again spending money with no real good outcomes, and it would be a waste of public funds. Also, we've got the proposal for Bishopthorpe as a forerunner to this request, as it were, and the recommendation coming out of this is that it doesn't meet DFT criteria for a village-wide 20 scheme, and we should await the outcome of the decision for Bishopthorpe, which followed on from this.
Do you want to talk about the Bishopthorpe one now, and then come back to? Yes.
So Bishopthorpe village-wide, there isn't any speed data, although Darren and I have requested some recently, so we get pre-implementation data or pre-consultation data. Accidents, the data cohort for searching for accidents in this area is quite large, and it's quite impractical without spending a lot of time. So there's no precise data, but I don't think there's any particular.
Not aware of any accident issues at Bishopthorpe.
Certainly none of any severity. There may be 1 or 2 minor ones, maybe even unreported, but the accident data is minimal. So the proposal is to do the experiment subject to future data analysis on a permanent speed change over a 12 or 18-month period, at whichever one that we feel best. And within that period of time, to do further speed data research so that it can inform the before, the beginning of, towards the end of, and then at the conclusion, and perhaps take a further consultation period beyond, just so see what the local residents think and businesses besides. A lot of the roads, especially the sort of through roads, it's already been mentioned, there's rat runs or whatever through Montague Road and Maple Avenue, but they will always be there unless we block them off, which is unrealistic in the circumstances. It's not that much of a busy area, but Acaster Lane, Appleton Road, and Bishopthorpe Road itself are the main areas where seeking to achieve a 20 mile an hour might be difficult, and there would be either further signage or perhaps some slight engineering needing to go in to remind people if those roads are included. If they're not, then we're going to sort of increase costs a little bit more by sort of allowing those to be independent of the overall village-wide scheme. So a number of different factors influencing things, but overall, a 12-month scheme seems to be the best option.
Okay.
It's felt.
And I think it's probably fair to say, Peter, that this is an area where I've pushed officers to try something new that's outside a little bit of the normal way that we would do things. And I think the reason for that is that we are getting a swell of calls from Dunnington, from Bishopthorpe. Some other villages have been talking to me about it as well, to try and reduce speeds to 20 mile an hour throughout the village. And I think a lot of that call is actually to make the environment more pleasant for people who are walking, cycling, just generally living in the village, and not directly related to the issues that you'd normally look at, which is accident statistics and and those kind of issues. So I think with this is an experimental traffic order, and it's experimental. One, can we get the speeds down? Will it work on a village-wide basis? Because we don't know, we've not tried it. So we're going to give it a go and see if we can do that. But it's also about how that changes the experience of the residents in the village, or if that changes the experience of the residents of the village. I was just so this the Bishopthorpe does influence the Dunnington decision. So just thinking about supporting the decision to defer Dunnington while we see what the outcome is of the Bishopthorpe experiment. I am aware of Councillor Waters' comments that actually what that could mean is it's 2 years before anything happens, if anything's going to happen, just because of the way that our processes work. So I'm keen to keep it to a 12-month experimental order, and I am keen to review the data as soon as we've got meaningful data that we can review, which is going to be at least sort of 3 months, isn't it? I guess, and then possibly 9 months will give us a good indication of where we're at, and then that will inform how we proceed certainly with Dunnington, but any other requests that we get from surrounding villages, because I've got a lot of sympathy with residents' desire to live in safer, more pleasant spaces.
So I just want to acknowledge the comment from Mr. Councillor Harrison, who said about parish councillor, that said that he would move with the 30 and then just 20 limits at the entry. That's not correct. We would need repeaters just to make sure that's clear for everyone, that if we put signs up around the Bishopthorpe, they are expecting them to be there.
Yeah,
we would still need them. I just wanted to be that clarity.
Yeah, but there's also a conversation to have, isn't it, between signage on poles or roundels.
Yeah,
and it may be that roundels are more appropriate in that kind of.
We do now have some discussion of how much to do, but there will be an increase in signage, just so it's clear.
Yeah, because if you are going to enforce and prosecute, then you need to be able to show that people knew what speed they should have been doing and can't say, actually, I hadn't seen a sign for ages. Sorry, you just say your name just for the record.
John Hunter. I'm one of the 2 traffic management officers in North Yorkshire Police. I've actually been involved in road safety for very nearly 40 years. So I've been doing this quite a long time. There is no doubt there is a desire to have reduced speeds, but reduced speed limits are not necessarily the same thing, as I'm sure you appreciate. And we have to make those speed limits work. In order to make them work, sometimes the measures required are either intrusive or expensive or both. And putting in an experimental order or a temporary order, there's always a problem if you find that it doesn't work, because you then have to spend money to make it work, or you have to take it out, which is obviously not an easy thing to do politically.
That's okay. We're used to dealing with things that aren't easy to do politically. But, you know, there's clearly a desire there from the residents to, you know, and I think it's definitely something that we should try and see if it works, and then we can learn from that, and that will then inform future decisions.
Sorry, councillor, at the end of the 12 months, would you want further consultation? Because we'll have to go out to consultation prior to this. Sorry.
No, has it been an experimental order? We'll do the consultation will be the first 6 months of the order, and then we'll have 6 months to write a report and come back to you. And then a decision will have to be made before the end of that 12 months. It won't, yeah.
And by 9 months, we should have some pretty solid data, shouldn't we? Okay. Okay, so happy to support the decision to defer Dunnington and to proceed with the experimental traffic order in Bishopthorpe Village. Thank you. Oh no, we need to go back to Hesse.
Apologies, jumping the gun. New Road Hesse. The speeds as below are just above 30 mile an hour, but well between 30 and 40. No injury accidents since the 1st of January 2017. 60 mile an hour current speed limit, linking Hesse with the A59 York Harrogate Road. One farm business premise on the stretch under consideration that has a tea room. There's only been one request, nothing from the parish council or any other concerned bodies or interested party stakeholders in that area. The road doesn't meet the criteria, the DFT criteria for a 30 limit, and doesn't have any support from officers within the authority and North Yorkshire Police.
Okay, where did the request come from?
A local resident.
Okay. Okay, because it is a stretch of road that links Hesse and Poppleton, is that right?
No, it goes down to the A59 across the level crossing, and then it comes to the crossroads.
Okay. Okay, in that case, happy to support your decision not to approve.
Thank you.
Okay, F, Boroughbridge Road.
Okay, A59 Boroughbridge Road. This was deferred from a previous timing as Dave Mercer requested the inclusion of Black Dyke Lane and Hodgson Lane. Understandably so. Black Dyke Lane especially is a very narrow rural road with no passing places, and Hodgson Lane is twisty with some impaired sight lines. The main reason for the proposal going forwards, 7 injury road traffic collisions since the 1st of January 2019 at the junction with Black Dyke Lane. Now, the reasoning for those accidents, or the principal reasoning, is lack of attention by drivers, unfortunately. However, we think by extending the 40 limit to beyond, on the A59 itself, to beyond the Red Lion pub, will allow the majority of traffic to slow down, which will in turn, because of the nature of the road and the bridge, cause all the other traffic to slow down, and people can perhaps be given a bit more breathing space. It does meet the DFT criteria for speed reduction and has the support of officers and North Yorkshire Police.
Sorry, just to be awkward, I've only just picked this up. It's not crystal clear from the report what we're actually proposing in this location. So you're proposing 40 mile an hour within your box line, is that correct?
It is, yes.
We just record that in decision because the papers aren't crystal.
It's in the main body of the report.
It's in the report,
yeah.
is it? Right. I'm just looking at the annex, sorry.
Yeah, no, that all makes perfect sense. Yeah, very happy to support that and approve the recommendation.
Thank you, councillor.
And is that us?
Backside of the report.
Okay, so yeah, and as it does say in G, you know, clearly traffic speeds, etc., will be subject to much debate, I'm sure, with the local transport strategy and plan comes out. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Got the next report, which is the post-consultation version of it. So these are where we've consulted on the changes.
Okay.
So do you want to just quickly take us through those ones, Peter?
Indeed. First one is Haxby Road, Clarence Gardens area up to Whitecross Road, with which you may be familiar. 9 accidents since the 1st of January 2017. No definite speed factors in the stats 19 from those. Urban 30 mile an hour road with residential properties and a leisure mix, but a children's playground, importantly, On the left going north from the main junction. The suggestion is to implement a 20 mile per hour speed limit between Loud Street and Whitecross Road to join onto the existing 20 that goes north over the old railway bridge. The responses, two responses are supportive. I'm not going to read them out, Councillor. And in the main, the officers, the features meet the DfT criteria for the proposal, and in general terms has the support of CYC officers and North Yorkshire Police.
Okay, yeah, no, happy to support that decision to approve.
Thank you. Okay. Montague Road and Keble Park Estates Bishop Thought speak for themselves. We're looking to implement, so that's a deferred decision subject to a much future debate, if at all necessary, because we're going with the 20.
We'll roll that in with the trial. Yeah,
it's just that I'll have to go back to the original person that requested that.
Yeah,
there were a number of responses in support for that one, by the way.
Okay.
The next one, Sutton Road, Wigginton. The currently a 60 mile an hour road where there's business and residences, along with an acute bend to the north of the section under consideration, and it's requested that the 40 mile an hour be extended further away from Wigginton in order that more drivers will be travelling that speed when they reach the acute bend, rather than perhaps braking heavily and especially coming south, vehicles tend to cross over the white line. 3 accidents since the 1st of the 1st, 2017. No speed factors involved, interestingly. The officer recommendation is post consultation is not to implement the 40 mile an hour proposal. Doesn't meet the DfT criteria, and the accidents have no speed factors as causation indicators. One consultation response is from the resident next door to the garage, lived there 50 years, can't see any reason to implement the proposal to a 40 mile an hour, not an accident black spot, no junctions, traffic lights, roundabouts, not particularly a residential area, and the other comments as well. Overall, not supported for the non-criteria being met, the DfT criteria, or officer or North Yorkshire Police support either.
Okay, yeah, happy to support the decision to take no further action.
Thank you very much. Those papers stick together. Bradley Lane, Rufforth. I'm going to, if I may, Councillor, invite the police to speak on this one as well.
Okay.
One accident since the 1st of January 2019, which was a fatality, but only owing to the weather. There was no speed factor involved in that fatality. This is a rural unclassified road to the southern side of Rufforth, and the request is for a 40 mile an hour buffer zone between the existing 30-60 mile an hour transition point and a point south of the double bend where the fatality occurred. Our recommendation is it doesn't meet the DfT criteria at all, doesn't have our support. It's based on one accident that had very sad consequences, but can't be put down to speed alone, and implementing the suggestion for a 40 mile an hour will make no difference whatsoever, it's felt, to vehicle speeds along that stretch of road. There's no real definite indicators as to why we should spend money when it wouldn't achieve the purpose we intended to.
Do we know what the cause of the accident was?
Ice.
No.
Sorry?
No, speak on that now.
Yeah, apply. Sorry.
Sorry, Councillor. The accident was caused, the accident occurred in, I think it was the 9th of January, late in the evening. There was ice on the road. The road had been treated. The deceased was a mechanic who'd been working late on a car, and was testing the brakes prior to going home. Believed there were possibly other defects with the car. He left the road and hit a fence, which is described as a bird's mouth fence, which is effectively a wooden fence, which went through the car and killed the driver.
Just to add, Councillor Kilbane, there are some additional works being looked at in terms of that fence and how that is put back. So there are some works planned alongside in response to the accident.
Okay, is there any other, normally where we have a fatality, there's sort of additional signage put in or anything like that in the pipeline?
There will have been a review. So whenever there's a fatality, we work with the police and do a review of all the fatalities that happen on the highway.
Okay. That's my case. Okay, I'm happy to go with the recommendation for no further action.
Wetherby Road, Rufford Primary School. There's no specific data from the Community Speed Watch team, so no mean or percentile speeds. However, it would be skewed slightly if we did have any because of the chicanes on either side of the school, and so nothing would be consistent, shall we say. No accidents in the area since the 1st of 1st, 2017. It's 30 miles an hour, not included, strangely and unusually, in the Safer Routes to School programme of 20 mile an hour implementations. It's suggested the 20 is appropriate in the interest of safety of the children, parents, staff, although some further minor engineering measures may be required. It may be that we may need to consider part-time 20 mile an hour signals, which are, I am advised this morning from John, are now legally enforceable and to be able to be implemented. Basically, when the lights flash, it's 20. When they don't, you're back to 30. So that we don't have a 24/7, 365, 20 limit. It'll just be 8:15 to 9:15, 3:30 to 4:30, or whatever time's appropriate. And it may be that that would be something that we could explore to implement as well. The consultation responses, generally supportive overall. The main concern is the fairly lengthy response in relation to the traffic overall, the congestion, that things have been caused by the chicanes. Have we done an environmental health risk assessment? The pathways. But for the time being, it is an anomaly that it's not included in the Safer Routes to School scheme, but it's a simple measure to try and improve the safety for the journey to and from school. And it has our support. Sorry.
I was going to say, given we've advertised 20 mile an hour permanent, not the sort of phased approach, my instinct, Councillor Kilbane, would be to implement that and keep it under review if we get any comments back. I think that would put it in line with the other Safer Routes to School as well, wouldn't it?
Yeah, no, obviously happy to support the recommendation to approve. I have some slight concerns about temporary speed limits at different times. I think it can be confusing. So, I think, yeah, go ahead as advertised. I think implement that and review. And of course, maybe in a year or so's time, the whole village will be coming to us saying, "Can we have a 20 mile an hour zone like Bishopthorpe, please?" So you never know, do you? Okay, so yeah, no, proceed as advertised. Okay, yeah, happy to approve. Thanks.
Very good. Thank you very much, Councillor. I think that's my business complete.
I believe it is. Okay, and I'm not aware of any urgent business. None has been brought to me. So I would like to thank officers for all of their work on all of the reports. Quite an extensive decision session today. I'd like to thank councillors and members of the public for their contributions. I would like to thank the IT staff who do a fantastic job in the background for all of these meetings, without whom we wouldn't be able to share it with the wider world. And I'd thank anybody who has been watching. And at that point, I will draw this meeting to a close. Thank you.